this, I'm gonna engaging students with English during the pandemic. So I'm gonna use, okay. So here, first I'm gonna talk a little about the context in which I'm working at. Then I will explain the project I did with my 7th graders. Then I'm gonna talk about the improvements I would have done to my project, right? And the learnings. So now I'm working at a private bilingual school, right? There, German and English are the languages taught, and students can opt for the IB program. I am gonna focus only on my 7th grade, which is composed by 22 students. It's important for you to know that we have mid-conferences once a week, and these are of 40 minutes. It's important to know, that we at first faced autonomy problems, and I think that most of you faced these problems too, right? Because we teachers and also our students are not used to work this way, right? This is new for everyone. And also there was a heavy workload at the beginning for students, as they had too much homework, too many assignments and projects and things to do. But then it was a little bit solved, right? Also, the English department in my school decided to give our students a participation grade for doing their homework and for participating in our classes, in the online classes, and by using the Google Classroom, uploading their materials, their assignments, and everything. So the 7th grade project was about the following aspects here. These were the contents to be assessed in the project: the past simple, comparatives and superlatives, and the narrating of a story. And how did I assess this? I decided to make our students do a comic strip. They could choose their format. They could use this digital tool, Pixton, or they could just draw their comic strip. Here you can see the objective, the general objective in which I based my project on, taken from the Priorización Curricular. And well, these were the steps to get to the project. So first, I taught my students the past simple. They practiced it. We did different online worksheets. Also, we played a lot of Kahoots because they love Kahoot. Then we move on to stories. I taught my students parts of the stories, connectors, the use of connectors, and all of that. And then there was one class only for teaching comparatives, then next class only for superlatives, and finally the next class was a mixture of both, right? Comparatives and superlatives and exercises in context and everything. And then we decided to put all this together in the comic strip. So this is the guideline I created, and I showed this to my students. There I explained that they had to include the past simple and everything that we have learned during the semester, that they could use this platform or simply draw their comic strip. Here is important that I also asked my students to record themselves reading the comic and then uploading just the audio. So here I recommended them to use Anchor if they wanted to, or they could just record themselves using their cell phones or the computer recorder. They decided, and the idea here was that they should imitate the characters' voices and emotions of their comic strips. I gave my students 3 weeks to do this project, and the language aim was to put into practice the use of English, writing and reading aloud skills by the creation of this comic strip. So they could individually or in pairs, they decided that. And here you have the instructions. They had to do between 10 to 12 boxes with text, because there are boxes that only have an image, right, or a drawing. And they had to include, here I specify everything, right? This is specific information of the content, right? So 3 affirmative sentences, 3 negative, 3 interrogative, 2 comparatives, and 2 superlatives. And this was only the minimum. They could include more if they wanted. And the story, of course, must have a beginning, development, climax, ending, using connectors. And the topic was related to school trip, because that was the topic of the unit. And of course, it had to be a real place from Chile or another country. So in this case, I gave my students different options. So they could choose a school trip to a safari, and there I gave them a website so that they could choose a real safari, right? A school trip to an amusement park, and there they could choose Disney or any other amusement park. A creepy museum. Again, I shared with them these 18 creepy museums around the world webpage. And of course, you teachers can choose other topics, or maybe give the opportunity to your students to choose another topic. I also wrote in the guidelines guiding questions so that they could use to start writing their comic strips. And here we have the progress. This was also part of the guidelines. So I decided to assess, not to assess, sorry, but to give each of the weeks that I planned the project, each week they had to present a progress, right? So the first week, this was the progress that they must have ready, main idea, for example, characters, the beginning of the story, etc. And here the second week and the following one. And here I told my students that I was gonna do a normal class, so that we could rehearse the contents. And then at the end of the class, we could discuss questions in relation to the project. And the same the next week and the following one. And what happened here is that I got too little time to work and check my students' progress in the online class, because these questions here were only 10 or 15 minutes of the online lessons. So there was no time to check all my students' progress. And that was not good, because again, my students were doing their work at the very last time, because they didn't present. They didn't have ready what I was asking them in each of these weeks. So yeah, oh no. So here you can see the rubric I designed to assess the comic strips. And here you can see the criteria. And what's missing? What do you think is missing there? Yeah, the progress. I didn't include it. So my bad there. Now I want to share with you a little bit of my students' comic strips. Some of them made a video, different parts of the comic. Others did a PowerPoint presentation, and some of them also draw their comics. So I want you to see how that looked. So here's the video. Take a look at it.
Cleopatra's Return. Hello class, today we will go on a trip to the biggest museum in this country, since we're going to write a history exam about the ancient Egyptians.
We cannot see the video, I think.
Really? You can't?
We can hear, but not watch it. We just
Oh, really?
see your screen. It's because you have to change the screen.
Oh, okay, I'm gonna do that. Wait. I have to go back to Zoom. Wait, how can I do that?
If you stop sharing, then you can share that again.
All right.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you are.
There we
Excellent.
go.
Okay, mister. She always arrives later than the others. Where were you? We're going to a museum today to learn something about Egypt.
So
Oh,
these
no.
students used
That's
Pixton,
going
right?
to be really boring then. Okay, kids, you can now look at the exhibition. As I already said, we will meet in 2 hours at the cafeteria. Please stay together. Ancient Egypt was one of the most grateful and most powerful civilizations in the history of the world. It lasted for over 3,000 years, from 3,150 before.
There you can see that they are using the past simple, right?
Didn't I see the voice in the news? I'm so tired. I'm just going to sit. This is Cleopatra. She lived over 2,000 years ago. Not now, Alex. Our teacher didn't tell us anything about you. Didn't you die many years ago? It wasn't our intention to disturb you. I wasn't outside for years. Finally, we didn't know that we would find you here. Who are you? You are more attractive than the others. That's Gonzalo. My perfect pharaoh.
All right, it continues, but I want to show you the other, another example. So here, there's a student that draw the comic. She also wrote the same that she wrote here in the comic, just in case I didn't understand her handwriting. But of course, I understood it. It was very clear. And
We
this
again cannot see it.
Ah.
You have to change what you're sharing.
Right. Thank you for telling me. How did I do it?
Stop
here.
sharing and then again.
Here. Are you?
Yeah,
Looking
that's
good?
okay. Perfect.
Okay. And here. Yeah, because there were two parts. There. And love is part of the story here. And then I have another student.
But wait, Catalina,
Yeah.
wait. Let us see a bit more of the text and the images,
Right.
because yeah.
All right, wait, I'm gonna put it from here.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
All right, and this is part 2 now here. I have to change this here. Now, part 2. She really spent a lot of time doing this. And here, I want to show you here another student that sent me their the image here, and you can zoom it in order to read each of the parts.
And which app did this student use?
Also Pixton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When they download it, they can have it that way. Or they could make the video, so they decided.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm gonna go back to the presentation. I don't know how to do it here. Yeah, here we are.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So to finish, I would like to tell you about my learnings.
Mm-hmm.
So in relation to time, I would give my students next time more time, yeah, to work in class, right? In the online lesson, maybe a whole lesson just to work only on the project. Also more time due to the students' lack of autonomy, as they didn't present their progress in the weeks that I asked them to do, right? In the weeks that were planned. Feedback, same. I would give my students the whole lesson and to check also one by one their progress. And I would also ask them to upload or send their progress so that we could have evidence, maybe upload it to Google Classroom. And yeah, of course, in relation to progress, make progress as a priority in the lesson. So have one lesson to actually check every student's progress and to include the progress in the assessment. So because maybe that way students it could be more important for them to have the progress ready for the lessons, right? So that's it. That's my presentation. Thank you for coming, for listening. And now if you have questions, I can answer some. So how can I go back here?
Thank you, Catalina.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go over to see if we have any questions on Facebook.
Yeah, you tell me.
Because
Or I can go
here
to Facebook.
we have one that asks, can you write the app on the chat? It's Pixton, right? Yes.
I'm gonna share my PowerPoint presentation to TESOL, and we are gonna open for everyone so that everyone can have access to this PowerPoint presentation. And there you have the apps and the digital tools, the websites. So don't worry about that because we're gonna share everything. And yes, it's pixton.com.
They're asking whether you checked the script beforehand. That's one of the questions.
Yeah, that was the idea, but they didn't have their progress ready in the weeks that I planned. So yeah, that was not the idea, right? But as I did a normal lesson and leave questions and progress for the end of the class, I couldn't. So yeah, I should have done that. So that's one learning there. So yeah, that would be very good. If you do it, you teachers, yeah, ask for the script beforehand and ask them to upload it so that you have it there, and not only in the online lesson.
Thank you.
Yep.
Another question is, did you expect any of the results about autonomy and evidence or checking? From Carlos Balaguer.
Can you repeat it, please?
Did you expect any of the results about autonomy and evidence / checking? Maybe, Carlos, you can
Yeah, I don't know what.
elaborate a bit more on your question.
Yep.
Hi, sorry. What I mean is that if you really expected any of the autonomy issues to be as prominent as they seem to be in the result.
No, of course, no, I didn't expect my students to have, as I planned it, I expected my students to have their progress ready each of the weeks, right? So that was totally something I learned at the the end, and well, my students too, because they were doing it at the very last minute. And yeah, that is why it is very important now that we include, for example, the progress in the rubric, that we ask our students to actually send us their progress, to upload it maybe to the platforms that you are using, Google Classroom or any other virtual classroom that you are using. So yeah, no, I didn't expect it at all.
Thank you, Catalina. And I think we have time for one more question. And I guess I could summarize a lot of the smaller questions that I see. They're basically asking about more technical or logistical issues. So is it a paid app, this Pixton app?
That's important, yeah.
Did the students have trouble? Did you have to teach them? So it's a lot of more, how did it work?
I told my students to always take screenshots of their work. Every time they did changes in Pixton, take screenshots, because the duration of the free version in Pixton is limited. They have like 1 or 2 weeks to work on it. So yeah, they had to all the time be taking like screenshots to save their work. Yeah. I actually had one student that paid it. And I was telling him, why do you do it? Yeah, but he wanted to have more access to other icons and yeah, more things.
Is it hard for the students to use it? Did you have to teach them?
No, I just showed them. Yeah, at the first lesson, I presented the website. I showed them how they could include the text, the images and everything, and then they did it by themselves. They didn't ask me anything. They didn't have problems. No, they really liked it.
And they're digital natives, so they know more than we do.
Yeah, true.
Do we have time for, I think we have 1 minute.
All right.
Have you ever thought of creating a project with other teachers from other disciplines like science or history? How would that look like?
Yeah, that's something we had in mind before the pandemic. But in these cases, in this reality, it's something difficult, but we have thought about it as a English department. Maybe with German, working with the German team, we have trying to do some things together, but not in 7th grade, in 12th grade, 11th grade, So yeah, it's a challenge. It's already challenging to be working online, so giving ourselves more challenges is something difficult. But if you have the motivation and your colleagues want to do it, I think that it's possible.
Yeah, especially with the Cleopatra thing, I guess it could be linked to
history. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, in that case, yeah, it could have. But in my school, they do differently in history. But maybe it could be, because of the school trip. Yeah, it would have been a little bit limited for the students. But yeah, it's possible. Huh? True.
Thank you, Catalina. If you have any more questions, you can post them here and we can ask them at the end of the session. And now we will go on to the presentation by Ximena Ibaceta. Ximena, I can't, oh, there you are. So you can take over, the floor is yours.
Great, so can you see my screen?
Yes, Ximena,
Yes.
perfect.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. I'm going to share with you my experience engaging my students during this pandemic. I will First, a bit of context. I work in a subsidized school in Quilpué. We have one class per grade and we have 42 to 43 students per class. But with this online teaching, we have an average of attendance of 30 to 32 students who connect to the online lesson regularly. We started sending handouts through email. So we had this huge number of emails in our emails, and it was very confusing for students and for us. So the school decided to apply for Suite, and now we're working with all the tools that Google Suite allow us to work with, as you can see here in this image. And we teach one class a week, or in my case, the English teachers, and that class is of 45 minutes. And the idea is that what we do in class and the materials that we present our students can also be printed, so they are able to be handed to those students who don't have a stable internet connection. And I think that's very important too. We work with the national curriculum, of course, but we don't work with the books from the Ministry of Education. We work with the books from National Geographic. And because of that, our focus is on topics and skills. And we decided as a school to work with formative assessment. So we give students feedback, and then they can hand in their tasks, and then we assign them as a percentage of achievement and a concept for that achievement. I'm going to present you 2 modules. We organized this online teaching in modules, so I'm going to present 2. But I will focus my presentation on module 2, where we, with my 7th grades to 10th grade, I will work on a project on a magazine, and I will focus on my work with 10th graders. Okay. So module number 1, the ultimate learning goal was related to the, developing speaking skills according to the prioritized objectives we have of video aprendizaje number 8. In the first week, I sent the students an explanatory video of how the module was going to work, and they had to work on a glossary where we have the main vocabulary that we are going to cover during that module. And we use Word document, as we all know it. The second week, we work on past events, past simple specifically, vocabulary, and I gave them as homework a reading comprehension exercise where they, in the Google form questionnaire, they had the pre, while, and post reading activities. So I only explained them, okay, you have to do this homework, it's about reading, and you have to do it in this way, so you go, do it, okay? Then next week was the same. I never gave feedback on the reading. I never did any post-reading activity. Next week, we played Kahoot with vocabulary and past events. And we did, again, new homework, pre, while, post listening activity in the Google form questionnaire. But here I tried to include the post listening also in the next lesson in week 4. And we try to work in groups, so the students will meet in group, and I created all these meet sessions where, as you can see here, and I had to go group by group. So I went into one, I hang up, and then go to the other, and so on and so on. It was very messy. In some groups work, in some works it didn't work, but it's a learning experience for me as well. And by the end of the lesson, I asked them to go back to the general meet session where we were all together. That was also very messy because some of them didn't know how to do it, even though I tried to explain it the best way I could. And there I explained the formative assessment, which was to create a video about a historical event or a historical character that they could choose. And for that, I gave them also an example using Instagram filters. So you can see I try to be Charles Chaplin here using Instagram filters. And I only explained the activity and I said, okay, this is the activity, here you have an example, and next week we meet here if you have questions about what you're going to say or if you want to practice pronunciation. And I assign students 5 minutes each or 2 students in 5 minutes. It didn't work that well because not all students signed, not all students appeared, and with those that appeared, I spent a lot more than 5 minutes. So in a way, thank God for those who didn't appear, but also, oh, where is their feedback? And then by the end of week 5, they had to upload to Google Classroom their videos. What I learned from module number 1, the effectiveness of reading and listening homework. Remember I told you that I sent them the pre, while, and post reading activity. I never explained vocabulary. I never introduced the topic, any of that. I let them work on their own. And then they are very honest with me. And they said that they translated everything, the text. And when the listening activity was with a video, some of them translated the video and also the question. So you see my lack of support there was very bad because they spent more time translating than trying to understand or trying to do the activity in the way that I want them to do it, but also I didn't explain that to them. Formative assessment, in this module number 1, formative assessment is only a name. We don't have formative assessment here because they didn't receive meaningful feedback. I couldn't see their progress in creating this video. So they only sent me their final product. The students' performance, students dare to speak more, okay? Some students who didn't speak in lessons, they sent their videos very soon, but they were still very anxious and very nervous. In that sense, it was good, but we still have the problem that there is lack of communication in English among the students and in Spanish as well. Now, we come here to module number 2. We have where the topic is about festival, and the ultimate learning goal is that they develop their writing skill, right? The read. So again, the same first week, I sent them a video explaining how is the module going to work and what is the final project that we were to do. We're going to work in their typical glossary that they work every unit, but now using Google Docs where they could edit so they didn't have to download, upload. So it was very in the moment thing. Then on second week, we, as here we have present perfect. So we play Never Have I Ever using Kahoot. And in the class, we did the pre-reading activity focusing on vocabulary. And then as a while reading and post-reading, they use again the Google Form questionnaire, as you can see there. Then in week 3, we use, again, we did the post-reading activity. To practice present perfect, we use live worksheets, where is a platform where you can upload your material and students can fill in the gaps, the typical fill in the gaps activity. And then we did a pre, while, and post listening activity in the class, very short with the materials from National Geographic. In class 4, we use, again, a listening activity. This time I decided to use real, authentic material, presenting them a YouTuber that I watch. And we went now to the written part. We stopped, still with festivals, but now we analyze an article from the website of The Guardian. We analyzed the article, what was it about, the parts of the article, and I explained that they had to create an article about a festival, a celebration, or a festivity. And I also explained them that we were going to work Google Slides and they all will have access to edit these Google Slides. So you can see here we have my instructions and then we have the work of one of my students and we all were in this document editing and working. So I explained them that in the next 2 weeks, we were going to work this way. So the first week number 5 was the first round of feedback, week number 2, the second round of feedback, and by the end of week number 6, in this case, they had to hand in or upload to, not that they just had to tell me that it was ready because we all had it in the common Google slide. And here you can see this is the whole project, because all the students, we were going to work with this magazine that we call the English magazine. So we had the students from 7th grade creating advertisement about their hobbies. 8th graders created editorials about topics related to health. They were able to choose which topic, it could be whatever they wanted. 9th graders they could interview famous people or some family members. And as you can see in the previous slides, 10th graders work on festival and articles. It was very good because they could learn how to use Google Slides, how to change color images and everything, but also they could learn about health, about festivals. They learned about each other's hobbies and about health issues, and not only coronavirus, that is kind of the main focus nowadays. And they were able to express themselves. Here I try to compress the whole interview in all this in only 1 and 44 minutes, I think. Here we have some examples. And one thing that happened to me was that with 10th grade, or with 8th grade, we had a very complex activity where they had to find information from a lot of sites. So some of their words were their own words, but others were not. And in 7th grade, which was an advertisement, it was simpler. We can see their own words, and that was very good for them because they realized that they could write something without using translator, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have 9th grade with the interviews, 10th grade. Here, 8th grade, I like this example because they finished in the first session with feedback and everything, but then they still kept reading about this. So they came to the second session, even though they were finished, and said, you know, Miss, we said that a migraine cannot kill you, but we actually read that it can, so we want to fix it. So that was really good for me because they were thinking about this. By the end of the module, which was by the end of the semester, I implemented a survey and I asked students what they liked, what they enjoyed the most, and what they realized or what they felt that they had learned. And they gave a lot of positive feedback for me in this instance. They like working with the glossary, which is also kind of a school tradition. They found activities engaging, they like working in pairs, and they enjoy being able to choose what to talk about or how to create their projects with no fear. And as you can see here, some of them said that it was distracting for all that is happening. And that is very good for me because that was one of my own goals at the beginning of this online teaching, okay? How can we make this something that we all can enjoy and not suffer more than necessary? I also asked them what they enjoyed the least and what they wanted to improve and what they wanted to see in this second semester. For some of them, it's still very frustrating that the way that I teach and the way we present materials, autonomous work is also a bit frustrating for them. So they had to translate word by word, which is not ideal. Here, I don't know, no ver más el verbo to be, and this made me realize that this new attempt to not teach grammar explicitly was very good because now they use the language and they also learn about new topics and new things that may be of their interest. And I also wanted to include this comment here because I think it represents the frustration that we all have regarding online lessons, because we are trying to make it the most of it, but we know it's not ideal. So here we have a clear representation of that frustration. And my learnings from Module 2 and Module 1, a scaffolded process towards independent work. That's very important. It's not just, okay, now you work on your own. No, you need to teach them how to do that, and you need to guide them in that process. I think that in Module 1, I tried to do a lot. In Module 2, I calmed down and I learned that more is not always better. The importance of feedback and formative assessment. So formative assessment, not just because of the name, but real formative assessment and real feedback and meaningful for them. And it's important to teach responsibility to students, but also let them know that you trust them. So, okay, guys, if you don't work, this is not going to work, but I trust you and I know you will do it. And that was very important for me and for them. And to give room for choice and expression. They could choose, even though I limited to a product, to a magazine and a written form, they had a lot to choose from. And that was very good for us, for all of us. Because I also learned from them as students. Some of them expressed their interest that I had no idea of. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Ximena, for sharing with us your ideas. It's also very important how you both, Catalina and Ximena, presented the analysis of your lessons. And that is something that sometimes we teachers don't have the time or the energy to do. But I think it's very, very, very important to reflect on our own practices. And the first question that I have is that if the whole magazine was made in Google Slides.
Yes, the whole magazine was made in Google Slides. Some students who had a poor internet connection, they work on their cell phones. Some of them could work with Google Slides from their phones, so they access the common PowerPoint. Others, they downloaded the Office version and then sent it to me, and I include it in the final product.
Perfect. There is another question. It says, how did you monitor that your students didn't look for the information in Spanish and just translated it? I think you mentioned a little bit, but if you can expand on that idea of monitoring.
Mm-hmm. Well, students were very honest, and some of them said that they did that, but we tried, some of them posted the information in Spanish in the Google slide, and then as they started working in English. Others told me that they use the translator, and I said, okay, so compare what you have in Spanish to what you have now in English. Does it match? Does it make sense? So I didn't demonize using translator because I think I would have lost some students, but I also have them make the effort of thinking, okay, it's not just copying and pasting and don't look at it anymore. Okay, so think, is it what I want to say is here? But I have to say that I didn't have control, for example, with those students who didn't connect to class. So I don't know if they did that or if they find information in English. So in that case, that was out of my control.
It's quite difficult now when we do online work to actually monitor that kind of processes in our students. Mm-hmm. There is another question that I think is quite related. It says, Catalina Morales says, did your students feel frustrated in the process? How do you deal with those situations?
Yes, they felt very frustrated. In that, well, we were all in the mid-session, so I could go, and they were all also at the same time in the Google slides, so I could see, and they asked me, okay, Miss, can you go and see this? Can you go and see that? So when they didn't know how to do something or how to write something or find information, they would just ask and we will help each other. And as we were all in the mid-session, their classmates also help each other. I think that the main frustration from my students with the magazine was not with English, but how Google Slides works, because sometimes they change the work of their classmates, but we all learn something new in that sense.
Collaborative work
Yes.
at its best. Wonderful. There are no more questions, and actually there are a lot of congrats for you, Ximena, so that is perfect. Everyone,
thank you to
think
the
it's
students.
yeah, it is a very good presentation, a very well explained the use of the resources that you had. So thank you very much. I will give back the floor to Malba, Catalina, and Ximena to do this wrapping up.
Yeah.
And again, if you have any more questions, please post them on the chat.
We have one more for
Perfect.
Ximena. Sofia Carrasco asks if this project helped you to get to know your students more and build rapport.
Yes, yes. It was very useful for that, because the first place, because we had a lot of new students that I only saw for 2 weeks. Some of them even arrived on the 16th, so I never saw them physically. And also because I am the profesora jefe of 7th grade, and I didn't teach them before when they were in 6th grade. So knowing their hobbies in this case was very good for me as a profesora jefe.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so we're back. So you have seen part of the work that Catalina and Ximena have been doing during these, 6 months already, teaching remotely during the pandemic. So we started today with the idea of engagement, student engagement. What is that? I said that engagement is active involvement, and active involvement considering behavior, considering social involvement, considering cognitive with it, and social as well. So it's not just participation, but kind of all these things together, which include motivation, participation, involvement, and commitment towards the learning process. Now my question to Catalina and Ximena is, so to what extent were your students engaged, and how do you know that they were engaged? I don't know who wants to start, Catalina or Ximena.
All right, I can start. Well, my students were engaged, and I could see that in their results, right? As you could see, they showed what they. Sorry, they showed that they were engaged because of the time they spent doing their comic strips. Well, even though it was at the end of the last week, right? The resources they used. It's obvious that there are some students that do this because of an obligation, and I think that we most of the time are going to have those students, but I can say that the majority of my students liked the activity and the project and enjoyed doing it, also because they could choose the topic, and they could also choose the format, so they had the freedom to do it in relation to what they wanted to and what was more interesting for them. Also, using this new digital tool, Pixton, was very interesting for them, and they told me so after they sent me their projects. And also, I don't know if you could notice, but in the examples I showed you, the comic strips, they included love in their stories. So they incorporated their personal experiences in the project, in the assessment of the English lesson. And maybe that is something that it wouldn't have been present in a normal test, right? In a multiple choice or a true or false test. But in this project, they could incorporate their personal experiences and things that are interesting for them and for their personal lives. So yes, they were engaged. What about you, Ximena? What do you think?
In my case, I also think that most of my students were engaged, and I think two factors play a key role here. The first one is that they knew that we were going to share this magazine with everyone, with all the classes and all the teachers, and we will post it in Google Classroom. So I think that was one little part of the engagement. But also, Catalina, as you said, giving the students the option to choose, that they can choose what to talk about, how they can do it, how they can write. So making them part of the process, and you being with them in the process, in my case, I think was very important. And I remember they didn't write it on the survey, but when we were doing this with the seventh graders, one of them told me that it was he thought that this was funny because he didn't feel like watching a YouTuber, and he was actually doing something during the class time. So that was very important for them.
Yes, yeah. So actually, that's a very good example of how engagement takes place. Okay, good. Thank you very much, both of you, for sharing your experiences. And this is, I mean, for me, it was very important that they could share and they could present part of the work. And the idea of engagement, as I said, it has been the major challenge during this period. Of course, connectivity and all the problems we have had with technology is an issue, still an issue. But apart from that, is how we engage them. It's, I mean, we can talk among teachers, and many teachers would say, well, my students do not have problems with connectivity. However, they are still not engaged in the classes. So what can I do about it? So this is what we're talking today. And our proposal is that actually we have to plan to enhance student engagement. It's something that there are strategies to do it. It doesn't happen, I mean, automatically. We are the ones who facilitate that process. So for these, we are proposing to plan a learning path. Yep, a learning path. And what is a learning path? It's a route, it's a path that integrates a sequence of activities. And these activities are asynchronous and synchronous. Of course, it depends also on how we're working at the moment with our students. If we see them every week, if we see them every fortnight, if we see them ever, so it depends on that. But the idea is that they know and we know what's the path to get to somewhere, to get to an objective. So if we plan this learning path, our proposal is that student engagement will enhance. But this planning, this path has certain characteristics. And what are these issues? We could put it like in different sort of milestones or different steps. First, and very, very important, and both Catalina and Ximena is that we have to put students at the center. We have to begin with students' learning conditions, interests, and needs. And for that, now we're in the middle of the year, so probably you have already got to know your students a bit better, yeah? What they like, what they don't like, and how they learn, and the potentialities to learn. And of course, learning conditions about connectivity, who is in the class, who only works with the phone, who only works with the computer, who only works with parents, etc. So first thinking about students, then of course getting into what is it that I want my students to learn. And of course we've got now these prioritized objectives and the curriculum, which we consider as an asset, as a benefit. Yep, in the end that curriculum doesn't constrain us. So we get the objective, we think, and not only, I mean, we select from priorización curricular, and we think about this path. What is it my students are going to learn in this month, in these couple of weeks? Think about a task, a product, like the ones we have seen here, a magazine, a video, a comic strip, a poster, an interview, something your students will be able to do by the end of the path, by the end of the module, by the end of the unit, yeah? And with different possibilities of formats, of topics, so that they can have some saying in their choice. They can choose some of the things, yeah? Probably not everything, but some. And of course, it's not just, okay, you have to do that and see you in 3 weeks. It doesn't work that way. We have to design a variety of activities to scaffold and monitor the process. So we have to scaffold the vocabulary acquisition. Of course, we have to scaffold language structures. We have to scaffold how they construct what they are going to say or what they are going to do with the language. So in that way, we have to design different activities in this path. Of course, define a period that everyone knows the deadlines, and not just because it's a deadline, but it's because the path we're going through that. So we teachers now, here through the Benos, and of course students and parents too. And of course, very important, define the assessment tasks and feedback opportunities when we're going to assess and when we're going to give feedback and the kind of feedback we're going to talk about. So we have just already seen 2 examples with Ximena and Catalina, and I'm going to finish with another one. In this case, it's more about kind of development of speaking and oral skills. In this case, again, we've got Objetivo de Aprendizaje 1 y 8, and in this case, the objective of the path is that students will be able to describe a local cultural event or tradition that reflects the Chilean identity. September, the month of Fiestas Patrias. Ximena already mentioned a bit of that her students did in with the magazine. In this case, my students would do a podcast, an audio file in which they will explore a cultural event and tradition. And this is the task. What makes us Chilean? What makes us Chilean? Well, I've got a husband who is Australian, and he always asks me this all the time. What is it that makes you Chilean and not Argentinian, not Bolivian? So then we have to start explaining. And this is what we do all the time. And it's good. It allows us to know other cultures, to compare our own culture, but also value and acknowledge ours. So what are the steps? Well, this is the task. This is the task and how I would introduce it to my students, right? I would, in this case, in pairs, but depending on your conditions, if it's in bigger groups, in individual, also the length depends also on the level. This is I thought for 7th grade, but it could be for 8th grade, year 10, and then depending on your students' level, learning conditions, etc., you would have to change some of these things, right? And of course, depending also format, etc. Digital tools, some digital tools they can use to produce this podcast, or just simply the phone, the audio recording tool they have, and some guiding questions so that they can produce it. So this would be the outcome. This is what I want my students to do by the end. So what is it that they do? I mean, what do we do? This is my learning path. I thought about 4 weeks to do this. So first week, I send the task. I tell them this is what we're going to do during these 4 weeks. I create an interest. I also activate previous knowledge. What other events do we know, etc. Probably here, I connected to one cultural event from another country, from an English-speaking country, so that we can contrast cultural events, and also to introduce some language which would be useful for their own podcast. Second week, exactly, I continue scaffolding, vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, all what it's needed so that they could achieve the task. And not only me, but students as well. At the same time, students start researching on the topic. They select the cultural event they are going to talk about. Week 3, preparation of the task. So the previous week, they have selected the cultural event, and then they start preparing it. So in this case, they do the drafting or the outline of the podcast already. And week 4, and here you have to monitor and give feedback. And monitor, it's like work. I really like the idea of Ximena working on Google Slides or on Google Doc, for example. For this would work perfect. The students at the same time, and you can help them preparing the draft or the script. However, here we've got an extra bit, which is not only the script, but also how to say it. And that would require, of course, monitor and feedback. And the last week would be sharing or presentation of this task. In this case, I would like my students to actually upload their podcast on a Padlet, on a platform, so that everyone can share it, and then we can even write comments on the different cultural events. Okay, so this is the learning path that I created, and the idea here, and we repeat, it's I want to highlight that idea that with this type of learning path is to enhance student engagement. That's to say that students get committed to their own learning. They can express themselves, they can express their emotions, they express who they are, and they of course doing it through the language. So, as to conclude, what have we learned so far? And I said we because okay, in this case, we're talking Ximena and Catalina, but it's with other teachers too. Reflections on this process, on teaching during the pandemic. We have learned a lot. And yes, teaching during the pandemic has been absolutely challenging, demanding, exhausting, stressful, as many of you wrote down. However, it has also been an opportunity for us to learn things that we have never been able to if we hadn't taught this way. So some of the learnings so far in this process. Yes, teaching remotely has been challenging. It has the potential to enhance student engagement so that they can actually become the owners, not only consume, not only digest what we teach them, but also produce and become their own teachers as well. So teaching remotely and creating this learning path, we believe that it can enhance student engagement. Doing what? Creating opportunities for the learners to engage with their learning, not only at behavioral level, but also emotionally and cognitively. Very important, Catalina and Ximena mentioned it already. Acknowledge students' feelings in the classroom, how they are doing every day, yeah? And talk about them and bring them into the classroom, but also let them experience and enjoy the moment, enjoy some of the activities we do in our classes. We have learned that it's important to be open and welcoming of learner suggestions. They can bring some activities, some topics, and of course some apps. Yeah, they can help with apps as well. And with this, we will finish. We believe that giving opportunities to all students to participate, so that they can choose some tasks that are relevant for them, and that we provide constructive feedback, being approachable to students and caring for and respecting them. Those are examples of practices, pedagogical practice that definitely can enhance student engagement. Thank you very much. We're going to finish here. And of course, we're very happy to answer your questions. And before I forget, if you want to share your experiences teaching during the pandemic, I invite you to write your names and your contact detail so that we can write to you and actually we can share your experiences. Not so sure if the university will continue with the second part of the text I showed you, Didácticas para la Proximidad, but definitely I think there is a lot of experiences, a lot of learning from teachers, from Chilean teachers that need to be shared and need to be acknowledged and valued in our community and beyond. So I think it's an excellent opportunity. Part of my job has to do with this, not only with establish connection with teachers, but actually to learn from practice. And what I was trying to do now was sort of trying to theorize a bit from practice. So not in terms of theory to practice, but on the other way around, practice to theory. Well, thank you very much. And well, now we're open and happy to answer your questions.
Wonderful. If you have any question, please use the chat. We would like to thank Malba, Ximena, and Catalina for sharing all these wonderful ideas and tools for these challenging times. I think that we have set challenge like 100 times in this few years. And also invite you to to share your experiences, because it's the way that we can help each other in these times of need and uncertainty. Yes, I think I have a lot of things, but I do have a question from Facebook that was not answered before for Catalina. And it says, was there any problem during their work? Something that you had to change, like in the process of their comic book preparation?
Right. I think that everything went well, but at the end was only that problem that I had, that I mentioned before, that what they didn't show me the progress when it was planned. So yeah, basically that was the problem, the main issue there. But during the process, no, I didn't do any changes. Well, there was one student, yeah, in that it was I had to adapt the guidelines because of special education needs. So in that case, I did some, I adapted the guidelines, but only for that student, to assess that student. So of course, you teachers can do that if you have those specific students, and you can change the rubric or the guidelines. In that case, I changed the amount of for example, I asked the student to only include 2 past simple interrogative questions, or 2 negative, 2 affirmative, and only 1 comparative and 1 superlative minimum. He could also include more, but yeah, that was something I changed.
The requirements, perfect. I have one question. I think it's very interesting. It says, how did you deal with parents? Did you have to? Because the person's, Macarena said, sometimes some of my students' parents complain about these type of activities, mainly because as they are difficult for them, they think it's going to be difficult for students as well.
Right. That's for him.
Well, in my case, we know that we have parents who are next to students during the lessons, during all lessons, not only English, because parents and students have told us that this. So I think what they all appreciated, both parents and students, is that we took a moment to learn how to use these different tools, how to use Google Doc, how to use Google Slides, how to use even Kahoot, because, you know, for some of them, they only have a cell phone. So if they go to Kahoot, they need to get out of the mid session. So you need to be patient, and you need to consider all that time in the planning, and tell students that if they have problems, it's not a big deal. We are all learning. So it was very good to be with the students, to accompany the students throughout the whole process, and to be available for questions. Of course, I still have parents who are very resistant, but I try to patiently explain them why we're doing this and how we're doing. And in some cases, I have even recorded with my cell phone tutorials, and I have sent them through email or through WhatsApp, so we can also support the process in another way.
Wonderful. Patience, it seems like the key word here.
Yeah, and I think that parents are also learning not only about the different subjects in school, but also how to use different technology, and that is something also new for them. And so they know, and sometimes I also tell them, okay, we're all learning, you, me, the students.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is a very key point. We are all learning to do this. This is new for everyone. Nobody expected a pandemic, I guess. It was not in anyone's plan. So I think that is very relevant. Okay, I think we don't have any more questions. We want to thank you again, Malba, Catalina, and Ximena, for sharing. Oh, yes, I have one more. Oh, I was saying goodbye. We have one more. So Carla says, what happened with the students that did not participate on the lessons?
Yes, good question.
Good question. Yes.
In that case, every time I introduce a task, or in this case, the formative assessment activities, I sent an email to all the students. So today in Spanish, because I know that parents also read them. Today we explain the guidelines for the formative assessment. You have to do this, this, this. We are going to, in this lesson, we're going to work in this way. In the next one, in this other way. You have to hand it in this date. And some of them, they because of internet issues. So they send their progress by the end, or in the middle, or through email. And I also give them this opportunity, this formative opportunity for feedback. So even though they did not connect, they are still present. And sadly, we also have those students who do not connect and do not present activities. So here we have a team effort with the school trying to engage them in the whole of the school process, not just my class.
Wonderful. Thank you. Catalina, did you have the same problem or no problems of students not participating?
Yeah, I had, but specifically with this student that had in which I had to do these changes. So in that case, I had to send him emails, and he sent me his work. But yeah, most of my students participated and did it. Well, the problem was that I had too little time to check if they were actually doing it, and their questions were not very detailed questions. So that's what I could see. But next time I'm gonna be there, like pushing my students to show me their evidence, send me their work and what, and yeah, and focus more on their progress.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We would like to let all of you know that this session is going to be available on Facebook. So if you have any questions or you want to go back to see the references and the name of the tools, you can go back to Facebook and check that. And we're going to be having more webinars. So we thank you for being here, and we invite you to the following invitations that we will have. Malba, do you want to say something?
Yes, I have a question. The thing is that we have, we could share our presentations and some of the materials, and we created a, so I don't know if you could, as you have the registration, if you could send that to the people
yes,
who were registered and
yeah, sure. Sure, we could if you want, we could share some sort of drive folder.
Yes, yeah, a good drive folder.
Everybody. That would be great. That would be great. So that'd be great.
Yes,
thank you.
That sounds just for being here. You will have an extra gift. I love it. Okay, so thank everyone. There are a lot of things in the chat, so we thank you for creating this opportunity to share our experiences. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and if you have an idea that has worked in your classrooms, please contact us so we can have you as taking the floor and explaining ideas and sharing with us, because that is what we are trying to do, to create community among English teachers and to help each other in this situation. So thank you very much, and I hope to see everyone very, very soon. So stay tuned with their social media.
Thank
See
you.
you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.